Honestly, after watching Widow's Bay episode 9, I have very little faith that the curse is ever going to end on this island because every probable solution has only revealed a bigger problem. And I'm not even convinced that Ruth is the last descendant. In fact, the closer these characters get to an answer, the further away the finish line seems. And that's what has me questioning everything we learned in this episode, because Widow's Bay is starting to feel less like a curse that can be broken and more like a system that's designed to survive. A system that may also pass through chosen people, maybe even people like Wick. So today I'm breaking down 5 clues you probably missed that suggest the curse is never ending. I'll also be discussing the biggest unanswered questions that I have about Widow's Bay at this point. But before we get started, let me introduce myself if you're new here. And if you're not new here, then welcome back. My name is Brandy, and I realize that you could be on any channel in the world, but you're right here with me, and I really do appreciate that. So please go ahead and like this video because it really does help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy watching TV show breakdowns. Now, clue number 1 is the secret mom. Now, episode 9 wants us to believe we finally identified the last surviving member of Richard Warren's bloodline, Ruth. Case closed, except I'm not convinced, because during Rosemary's genealogy presentation, she specifically mentions that Ruth never had children. And at face value, that sounds like the end of the bloodline. But episode 8 planted a clue that suddenly feels more important. In one of Evan's mother's letters, she writes,
"Dear Evan, everyone has 2 mothers, a mother and a secret mother."
At that time, the letter sounds mysterious and symbolic, but now I'm wondering if it was literal. What if Widow's Bay has been hiding descendants for generations? What if some children were raised by people who weren't their biological parents? Or what if certain bloodline members were intentionally concealed to protect them from whatever has been happening on the island? Because if the curse truly follows blood, then hiding descendants would be one of the few ways to keep them safe. And here's the bigger implication. If Ruth isn't actually the last descendant, then killing or sacrificing her won't solve anything. The bloodline will still exist. The cycle continues. And that would fit perfectly with one of the biggest themes we've seen all season. Every time the characters think they found a simple answer, Widow's Bay reveals the problem is much larger than they realized. Because what if Ruth did bear children and she was a secret mom? Her descendants are probably right in front of us on the screen. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Ruth is Tom's wife's mother, which would make her Evan's grandmother. And then Evan would be the last in the bloodline, as we initially suspected. And clue number 2 also lends itself to this curse never ending. It's the way that Wick always pops up at convenient times, if you noticed. And the more I think about episode 9, the more I get suspicious of Wick and his involvement in maintaining the curse, because somehow he always seems to be standing exactly where the next piece of mystery is about to be revealed. He noticed the missing boogeyman mask. He became involved with Richard Warren's body. He developed a wound in the exact same location where Richard repeatedly cut his hand during his mushroom ritual. He disappeared beneath the water and giving different energy when he returned. And on this episode, he appeared right when the sheriff was trying to figure out how to leave the island with his pregnant wife. And he's also the one that ordered Rosemary to do the genealogy report. At first, I thought Widow's Bay might have been positioning Wick to replace Richard. But now I think something more interesting may be happening. Richard spent centuries protecting the secret. Wick keeps uncovering it. Richard was the keeper, but what if Wick is the seeker? Because at this point, it almost feels like Widow's Bay is nudging him towards the truth. If Widow's Bay wants his secrets hidden, why does it keep allowing Wick to get closer and closer to them, unless discovering the truth is exactly what the island wants him to do? And if you watched my last Widow's Bay video, I did explain that I think that there are 2 different mechanisms that keep this curse going as well. At least 2. It could be more than that. But one mechanism is the bloodline, but the second mechanism is the covenant, the pact that Richard signed with the island. So I don't necessarily think that Wick is part of the bloodline, but I'm not sure what happens in his disappearing moments. Did he somehow agree to the pact when he was in the ocean? I'm really not sure, but we really have to keep our eyes on Wick. And clue number 3 is the lack of conversation about the boogeyman on this episode. One thing that really stood out to me in episode 9 is what nobody was talking about. At the end of episode 8, we see that Patricia kills the boogeyman and she burns his body in the incinerator. And that's a huge deal. Yet in episode 9, it's barely mentioned. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this isn't the first time Widows Bay has done this. Major supernatural events happen, and then everyone seems to move on surprisingly fast. Even the way Tom and Wick are talking about killing Ruth in almost a casual fashion. So the calm demeanor of the townspeople really raises a red flag for me. Now, are they simply desensitized after generations of curses, sacrifices, storms, and monsters? Have they become so accustomed to the impossible that they no longer stop to question it? Or is something else happening here? Because if Patricia really killed the boogeyman, shouldn't everyone be obsessed with figuring out what that means? Instead, they're already focused on the next mystery. It's like Widows Bay never allows anyone to just sit with a breakthrough long enough to understand what it means. It's like the cycle just keeps moving forward aggressively. And clue number 4 is the island trying to keep the baby. Now, one of the most interesting parallels in this episode involves 2 pregnant women separated by years. When Tom's wife Lauren was pregnant with Evan, they attempted to leave Widows Bay. And according to Tom, Lauren's body immediately began reacting. She lost her vision, lost other bodily functions, and eventually she suffered from a stroke and then an aneurysm 2 years later after giving birth. And the assumption has always been simple. People born on Widows Bay can't leave. But episode 9 may have quietly challenged that idea, because now we have the sheriff desperately trying to get his pregnant wife off of the island before she gives birth. And just as they're about to leave, a massive storm traps them. And at first glance, it feels like history repeating itself. But what if we're looking at it the wrong way? What if the island isn't trying to stop the adults from leaving? What if it's trying to make sure that the baby stays? Because one thing we've learned throughout this series is that bloodlines matter, descendants matter. People born on Widows Bay seem to become connected to whatever is happening there. So maybe the real question isn't why people born on an island can't leave. Maybe the question is why the island is so determined to keep creating them. Was the storm trying to stop the sheriff from escaping, or was it making sure that the child is born on Widows Bay? And clue number 5 is Tom trying to rip that weird calendar apart. And one of the strangest moments in episode 9 lasts only a few seconds. Tom, he gets frustrated about the massive incoming storm, and he's mad that he has to sound the siren. So he looks at the calendar on the wall, and at first I just thought the writers were just showing us how Tom is trying to determine how much longer peak season is, or something to that effect, something business related. But then he tries to rip his wall calendar in half, and he can't. And maybe it's nothing, but this calendar has been shown to us a few times, and the writers could have had Tom do something else. He could have threw a chair, smashed the bottle, anything else. Instead, they specifically chose a calendar, a symbol of time. And then they showed him being unable to destroy it, almost as if the show is quietly telling us that time itself is resisting him. In the opening flashback in this episode, Richard Warren's son develops a nosebleed the moment his family crosses the boundaries surrounding Widows Bay. Now, obviously that doesn't prove time travel, but sci-fi fans, we immediately recognize nosebleeds as one of the most common visual indicators of maybe temporal displacement, timeline interference, dimensional crossing. But then there's Patricia. A few episodes ago where she mentioned that her bio age is 28, and then Shep, the sailor that died at the beginning of the series, his age was listed as 37 years old. And also Ruth. Ruth has been sitting in front of us all season, yet she's directly connected to events that began more than 300 years ago. And the more I think about it, the more Widows Bay feels like a place where the past never completely stays in the past. Ancient events don't feel distant on this island. They feel very active. Now, I'm not convinced that we're dealing with traditional time travel, but I am constantly wondering whether time functions differently on Widows Bay. Because at this point, the writers seem far too interested in age, timelines, and relationships between past and present for it to be an accident. Now let's move on to the unanswered questions that I have. Now, one of my biggest questions still remains, what exactly is Widow's Bay? Because at this point, I'm not sure whether we're dealing with a supernatural force, something more sci-fi, or if I'm simply just overthinking it all. And I'll be honest, the way the show barely revisited the boogeyman situation from episode 8 made me wonder if we're actually building towards a big reveal at all. Or maybe the mystery isn't the point. Maybe we're just supposed to enjoy the characters and the show's love letter to classic horror, folklore, and supernatural stories. But tell me, what do you think? Is Widow's Bay building toward a big answer, or are some mysteries meant to just stay mysteries? And next question, did you notice that when Sarah escaped Widow's Bay with the kids, that the boy, one of Richard's sons that is, he developed a nosebleed, but also what looks like a bloody injury on his left palm too? And that immediately caught my attention because Richard, he used to cut his left hand during his true sight ritual. Then earlier this season, Wick ended up with an injury in that exact same location on his left palm after helping dig up Richard's body and interacting with the pendant. But at this point, seeing the same injury show up on 3 different characters, that is too specific to be a coincidence. A very important question. Do you think that the sheriff should have told his wife what was going on? I understand he's trying to protect her, especially being so close to giving birth. But if there's a chance that the baby born on Widow's Bay can never leave the island, shouldn't she have been given that information and allowed to be involved in a decision-making process? I mean, if I was her, I would really want to know. Also, was anybody else getting just a little bit bored with Rosemary's genealogy presentation? I mean, it was funny at first, and I know there are probably a ton of clues within that report, but after a certain point, I'm like, damn, can you just tell us who the last descendant is? And Rosemary, she is a hot mess. Let me tell you, she is a hoot. She is hilarious to watch on screen. But have you ever had a coworker in real life like Rosemary? That's not somebody that you really want to be your coworker, because the minute you turn and walk away, she's going to be talking smack about you as well. And the way she kept saying during that presentation, she kept saying, dead baby, dead baby, dead baby. I really hope they aren't foreshadowing anything in the future about the sheriff's baby. And last question, is Tom really going to kill Ruth? I am predicting that Tom will go to Ruth's house, but he will discover something that will prevent him from killing her. Who knows, maybe he'll discover a secret child, a secret grandchild there. Something is going to be at Ruth's house to stop him dead in his tracks though. But nonetheless, guys, if you made it this far in the video, please do me a favor. In the comment sections, drop down a red heart for me. And also, let me know what other clues that I might have missed or what theories you have. And as most of you know, I'm also covering from season 4. So make sure you watch those videos as well. And I will be covering Silo when the next season comes out on July 3rd. But that's it for today, guys. I hope you guys stay safe out there. And until next time, peace.